Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and here I have a lightly wet ball of Knit Picks Simply Cotton Sport. This is a sport weight yarn. Obviously it's 100% organic cotton. And I just, had it for maybe half an hour in some water. I am going to apply some dry tulip one-step tie-dye powder to the outside of this ball. I am curious how deeply it'll penetrate, since I know that this spreads out a fair amount. Yeah, so I'm just sort of sprinkling. I'm using red and orange. This is dye that I've used in a few other experiments today. I'm not planning on submerging this or anything, but as it moves around, there are multiple layers. I think that we will get a little in that center area. It'll spread out. We will definitely get some kind of speckling. I think that this will spread through a couple layers, but then, there should probably still be some white in the center. So I am curious what this will look like. I've really enjoyed playing with these dry powders. So obviously you could do this with wet tie-dye as well, but if we were using the wet dye, I know that it would penetrate deeper. So this might give us some nice shallow dye penetration. You'll see some of the powders on the counter, sort of sopping it up. And now we're going to do the orange on the other side. Once again, I'm going to get to this end portion and let some go towards the center. It's possible that the color penetration will be a bit shallower than what I expect, but I am really curious to see what kind of patterns we get. I am wearing a dust mask right now, which is why I might sound a little bit more muffled than normal. And this is just a preventative measure since I'm dealing with this powder and I don't want to inhale it. Even without specific warning labels, you never want to inhale any kind of powder. It's just not good for your lungs. There we go. Okay, we've got some good color coverage on the outside of this ball. And it's not super wet, mainly because I know that this yarn has a little bit of trouble getting really saturated. But I am just really curious what we're going to end up with. And so I thought it would be fun to try out this experiment. I'm currently going to let this sit for about 24 minutes. And the reason why I selected this length of time is that's how much time is on the timer of my dedicated dye pot steamer basket right now for another project. So I'm going to let this sit for 24 minutes and then we're going to go ahead and steam it to set the color. There is some extra dye powder on the surface, work surface. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to take this plastic wrap, which was also used for some other projects, wrap up our little ball of yarn and plop it into my dedicated dye pot steamer for 30 minutes. Our little ball of yarn is at the bottom of our big steamer basket. I'm currently heating it up, but I'm going to let this steam for 30 minutes. The 30 minutes are up. Now I can turn off the stove and we can remove our ball of yarn from the dye pot. And now we want to let it cool completely before we wash it. Let's get ready to wash our yarn. Probably should put gloves back on, but I guess I felt like living a little dangerously. And by danger, I mean that I might end up having red hands. That is the only concern here. There we go. Look at those colors. There's a lot of color left in here. Ooh. So that's kind of fun. Nice and mottled. And so I do see some paler colors going towards the center, but we definitely have some spots without any color, which is really, really fun. But now we just need to rinse off as much as we can. And oh good, we do have some brighter tones going towards that center. I know I'm sort of doing a little bit of a spoiler here. But anyway, at this stage, we just want to, the water won't necessarily be completely clear because I can't get access to all of the fiber easily right now. But we'll keep washing until it gets as clear as I can get it, and then later tonight we will unravel it onto a niddy noddy so that way we can both see the gradient and it can dry better. So it would be hard to dry in this ball form. But I will come and show you the ball before I start unraveling it. There is a reason why I usually try to unravel these balls while they're wet. I let this dry over the weekend and it smells a hint mildewy. But I know I'm going to wash it again, so I don't really anticipate this being a problem. I'll let you know in the finished dry yarn how that resolves. But now I am going to go wind this around my niddy noddy so we can see the gradient. Here is our gradient wound onto my PVC pipe niddy noddy. I haven't even fully washed this yarn yet, but that musty smell I mentioned before is completely gone. I let the yarn dry completely on the niddy noddy just for timing reasons. The gradient is pretty shallow. We have this bright variegated section of the deeper red and orange, and then we get more and more of these pastel colors. Now the very end is not completely white, but the small patches of pink, maybe a tint of yellow and orange, are much further between, but you can still see some hints of some of the pale color in there. I think that this technique is a lot of fun, and actually this is a way to get shallow penetration of the tie-dye powder into our yarn by having something that isn't completely saturated and dry dye. So I can imagine that we could dye some yarn, roll it up into a ball, and then roll it in some powder if we wanted to get some, I guess, some really kind of interesting, different new colorway. I do still need to wash this because I never really finished washing it completely. There's actually even some dye that was left on the base of our wash basin. And the reason why I didn't rinse it completely is that it's really hard to wash an intact ball of yarn and rinse it thoroughly. And one of the reasons is that you just can't get the water easy access to everywhere. Now it's possible our colors will diminish some. It's possible, even though this is now probably at least a week old, that we could get some staining on the wider patches of the yarn. But it's just going to take some washing, especially because I've found that this organic cotton yarn is not that absorbent. So it takes a bit to get the fibers saturated. But nevertheless, it will take a little bit of time. There was a lot of dye on here. I am going to add some clear dish soap to help dislodge some of the excess dye. Sometimes the addition of soap helps you get more bleeding. And even once we get the water to remain clear, anything that has been hand dyed, I always like to wash on its own or with really, really dark colors the first few times. Think about really, really dark jeans or, red shirts. This can happen with commercial dyes and home dyes. But you don't want to risk staining anything you don't want to stain. So, and anyway, I am going to keep washing this until our water runs clear. I might do soap and second time, not entirely sure. Notice how I'm keeping my hand around this skein as I'm washing. This is allowing me to get access to the fibers while preventing tangles. I'm not always good at pointing this out, so I just wanted to share that with you. I'm also trying hard to not squeeze this too much. 100% cotton does not have a lot of memory, unlike wool, which can bounce back a bit more. But anyway, I will come back with some conclusions when our yarn is completely dry. While I wish that the overall brightness could have penetrated more into this ball of yarn, this is an easy and simple way to get a gradient yarn. You don't even have to wind it into a cake to begin with. All we had was a damp ball of yarn, some dry powder, and check it out. Faded projects are all the rage right now, and so using some kind of gradient yarn in conjunction with combining colors is a great way to add a wonderful color element to your fade. I love the way the different oranges, reds, and pinks run together, and that we still see some pastel versions of these colors through the whiter section. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and if you'd like to learn more about some of the products that I've mentioned in this video, check out the video description for links to the Knit Pick Spare yarn, to the ChemKnits Creations Etsy store, and more. Don't forget to subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel and give this video a like. Thank you so much for watching.